now. This is my friend Mandy Yates. So she's going to be asking me questions that we've received. It's been what, like 3 weeks? 3 weeks since we've had the show. And there's a lot of questions that we get. I'm just going to let you guys know right now. We received quite a few questions actually about jumping on your guest, pulling on the leash, and excessive barking. So what I want to say about that, and we are probably going to talk about it a little bit because it's always part of the conversation, but we've been producing so many videos about those 3 topics. So if you're needing help with your dog doing the jumping, the pulling, the excessive barking, and those kinds of things, what I want you to do here on the channel, if you just go into the channel homepage, you're going to see the tab that says playlists. And there's 2 places that you can actually go to get help. The first playlist that I would recommend to you is Al the Dog Trainer's Training Tips. I think that's right, but it says training tips on there. If you go in there, I believe that there's 187 different videos, and a lot of them have to do with those very common issues of pulling on the leash, excessive barking, jumping, and those kinds of things. Maybe watch some of those videos. However, there's another playlist that I'm actually going to recommend to you, and it's a newer playlist. I think we have 3 videos in there, and that one's called Al in Action. And in those videos, you're going to see me actually practically teaching dogs how to do things. Now, a lot about that, when you're actually teaching a dog to do something, you're actually working at teaching the dog to not do things by actively teaching them to do something that you want. So if you're having problems with those big, major issues, jumping, leash pulling, excessive barking, and those kinds of things, be sure to check out Al's Dog Training Tips and Al in Action. You can also watch Al's Virtual Reality Dog Training, which are my VR videos that are going to be a little bit more in depth. They're going to be immersive if you have a VR headset or if you have your phone and you want to look around. You can watch any of those, and those are going to help you. But if you have a serious barking problem and you've watched those videos, you're at your wit's end and you don't know what to do, please shoot me a question. Drop it in the comment section down below. So, well, hey, so again, welcome. I'm really excited to be back. I took a vacation. I think I'll talk about that for just a second because I think it really plays into some of the things that I've learned over the past 14 years training dogs. As a matter of fact, I've got my 2 dogs here with me. Gabby's over there. Fritz is right here, right next to me. Today is Fritz's 9th anniversary of his gotcha day. So he was actually born in April, but I got Fritz, September 15th, got Fritz on September 15th, 9 years ago. So it's just pretty incredible, the relationship that I have with him. But speaking about my vacation, I went to Colorado for several days, and I actually took Gabby with me. We got in my car and we actually drove up there. The drive took me a couple of days to get there, and man, it was just really great to see how calm she was along the way. It was quite a few miles. We were on the road for 8 miles both of those days, so it was a lot of miles. Gabby did great. But what I'll tell you, because we've really spent a lot of time working on being calm and walking nicely on the leash in the hotel room, in the lobby, at pit stops, it was just so easy to be able to deal with her. When we actually did get to Colorado, when we were in the mountains, it was just really nice to, at some portions, to be able to take her leash off of her and to be able to trust her, to be able to move around with me, not having to give too many commands. I did have Gabby's remote collar because in the place that we were hiking, there were bears and there are other predators, and I did want to obviously keep my dog safe. But this whole thing, taking your dogs on vacation is just one of the best things that I did. But I really concede that if the dog wasn't trained, that it's actually going to be really difficult to go on vacation with your dog. So just some encouragement for all you guys that are maybe struggling with your dog. I want you to know that it is possible to be able to train your dog up, to be able to go out on a nice excursion, leave the state, maybe even go abroad with your dog, and that it can be joyful and fun, and everybody can have a great time. So, well, anyway, I guess we're going to get into questions, and if you have a question at any point in the show, there should be some graphic up right now down below. please be sure to drop those down in the comments. If you guys like the responses that I leave, hey, it would mean a lot to me if you give it a thumbs up. And if if you have any points of contention or anything like that, man, I'm always interested to hear different viewpoints about the things that I talk about, because I definitely don't know everything that there is to know about dog training. I continue to pursue more and more knowledge there. So anyway, I guess we're ready. Are you ready to ask me the first question? Okay, so what's number one?
Okay, when I'm outside with my dog, she eats everything. If she goes out by herself, she won't. How do I get her to stop?
It's really interesting. So, Mandy, what do you have any guesses? What do you think's going on right there? Like,
It's strange that she does it when her owner's there. My dog will go and sneak poop when I'm not watching, but she would never do that while I was there. So that's strange.
Well, it is a little strange, but I'll tell you, Gabby does exactly what you're just talking about, and it's really interesting to watch her. Gabby sometimes doesn't need to use the restroom, and we'll put her outside, and maybe she does use the restroom, and then she just comes right back in. But there's other times that you can just see her trying to pull me out the front door, and if I go out there maybe to sit on my patio, have a drink or something like that, or just relax for a few minutes, Gabby will endlessly bring me things. She'll be picking up every single last thing, and I can tell you what it is. She just wants to play. Actually, before we started this show, I was in the office working on a video, and Gabby, from my bedroom closet was open, Gabby grabbed 4 shoes and littered them all through the house and started trying to push the shoes at my mom and myself to see if we would engage her into some kind of play. So here's what I think: if your dog is, let me
She
get this
says
right.
eating, not
Eating,
like
but
eating.
Yeah, but eating. But I think it's a kind of play. It's a kind of play. Maybe it's a form of play. Because like Gabby picks up sticks and starts chomping on them, but isn't necessarily eating them.
Yeah,
But
I would like to know what kind of things like she's eating.
Well, think about this. If your dog is doing anything in front of you, and this is a mildly excited behavior, it's not the most, but it's a mildly excited behavior, they're definitely doing it to get your attention, to try to get you to do something with them. Like the obvious answer is not necessarily the best one. Put a leash on your dog and stop your dog from doing that. But that's only going to cover up the issue that you're having with some kind of Band-Aid, because it's going to prevent your dog from going and eating the stuff in your backyard. So, when you take your dog in your backyard, you have to actually kind of plan some activities that are going to get the dog's interest off of doing that. This is why we're always looking at playing games like fetch and playing games like tug, but then we also teach our dogs play stays and down stays in the backyard. I like the downstay in the backyard, not so much the place. I love the play stay inside the home, but the downstay in the backyard while you're maybe interacting with your backyard, like you're doing yard work or something, or you're just chilling or relaxing back there. But if you're going outside and the dog only does it when you're there, that's definitely telling you that your dog is trying to get your attention, to get you to engage in some kind of way. So you can either tell the dog that you're going to have to settle down and put them on a place or in a downstay, but then you have to start reinforcing that, or you have to take your leash and you have to really physically restrain your dog. Now, if your dog is doing something that's dangerous, then you do need to step in with some kind of training collar when they go after that. And I'll just share this quick story. I met up with a client on Saturday because their dog had been very, very ill for probably for about 3 weeks. And the reason is the dog went in the backyard and started eating off of their oleander plant. And oleanders are very poisonous for your dogs. So dog got into that. The dog lost quite a bit of weight. The dog did survive. And so I gave him some strategies to be able to do that. And one of those strategies is that when the dog is trying to go over into the plants, that after some initial remote collar training, that we were going to use the remote collar to say, like, hey, you can't eat the oleander because it's gonna kill you. So you have to actually get in trouble for doing that. Now, I'm not saying that the remote collar is the unequivocal way to go and to go and punish your dog for going after things. But I think that it's important that we all as pet owners do our part to teach our dogs to stay away from those plants that are really poisonous if we're going to have those in our backyard in the first place. So again, just kind of rehash that. If your dog is in the backyard and you're with it and the dog is picking up and only eating things when you're there, this is time for you to step in and begin to work the dog primarily with its food, because this is really a scent driven, kind of exercise for the dog. Work the dog for some kind of food, some kind of activity, incorporate a play stay or a down stay into that, and as you do that for a few weeks, I'm sure that the outcome is going to begin to change.
All right.
Okay.
Next is my dog constantly licks me and feels the need to just constantly lick. If I tell her not to lick with a firm tone of voice, then she becomes submissive and tries to lick me apologetically.
Mandy and I were talking about this question before, and so like you said, you have a dog that does that?
Yeah, just if I get firm with her, she, not necessarily the constant licking, but I know what she means by the submissive, like.
So you'll like say no or something like that, and the dog will be, come over to try to start licking. It is kind of like a double-edged sword right there. Where the dog is doing that. Like there's a lot of ways that you can go about doing this. When I think about this, like there's different ways that you can handle it. The one way that's probably, like, I don't know that it'll be that effective, but it's where you should start. Can you redirect the dog to something? And actually, I grabbed my bag that I carry all of my equipment in, and actually started carrying something new this week. And I was just really thinking about the Kong. So when you have this issue with this licking dog, and it's licking incessantly, and you don't want the dog to be licking you, you gotta send that behavior somewhere, like, because the dog wants to do it. Okay, you do have to put limits, but you gotta send that behavior somewhere. So like this is a medium-sized Kong. It's not that big. It's not that big of a Kong. But what I'd recommend is with the dog's place, put your dog on its place, and begin to teach the dog that, hey, we're going to want you to direct all your licking behaviors at the Kong when you're on your bed. I have a suspicion, and I might be wrong, I have a suspicion that this dog might be licking when it's up on the couch with you. And so it's okay for your dog to be on the couch, but if you want to put an end to this, or you want to begin to give the dog a better pathway, I recommend place training plus the Kong. Now, the Kong, you're not just going to give it to the dog with this empty cavity right here. What you need to do is you need to find something that's valuable. Common things that are valuable to put inside of Kongs could be like sugar-free peanut butter or almond butter. You can also mix in kibble with that. I've seen folks do cheese inside of there. The one thing that I do with my Kongs for my dogs is that we take them and we'll put them inside the freezer. We'll put them inside the freezer before we give it to them. So get you a couple of these. Get your dog onto their place. Make sure that they understand that they have to stay there, and then you can use the Kong to direct the licking behavior, and just be there in the room at the same time that the dog is doing this. And then as your dog is licking the Kong, begin to pet your dog and praise your dog for going after that. Then I do want you to do this. Maybe after a couple of days that you've figured out the Kong and the dog is liking on its place, I want you to take the Kong off of the bed, okay, with whatever goodies you put in there, and then when your dog comes off, calmly say no to your dog and put your dog back onto the bed, okay? And you're going to see a little bit of licking, but when the dog will actually stay on the place with the filled Kong off the edge of the bed and will stay there calmly, then you come back and you bring the Kong for the dog to begin to lick again. This is a good way to begin to kind of secondarily punish the licking behavior, because the dog is going to, you're going to tell the dog no for coming off, and you might see a little bit of the licking behavior. But if the dog comes down to their place, then you can bring this back and the dog can start, getting rewarded for doing the right thing again. Beyond that, you really have to think about if the dog's on the couch and the dog is licking you too much, how are you going to create a clear boundary for the dog not to touch you, but still be able to have the ability to lick? And so that's the catch to this exercise. It can be on the couch. You could really kind of be like me and my big brother. We would, draw a line in the back seat of the car and say, "You're not allowed to cross this line." Mm-hmm. So if you can draw that line for your dog, a leash is real handy. Then that's a good way to go.
Okay.
Hey, buddy.
Next question is, my golden retriever doesn't stay when I use the slip leash. I have to keep putting her back. How do I get her to stay?
I'll tell you this. Over the past couple of years, I've had a little bit of struggle with some golden retrievers actually getting them to stay. And so yesterday I had the opportunity to work with one, and it's just funny because we all have different perspectives. As I was working with this golden retriever, the family at the end, they ended up hiring me to work with their dog, but they're like, "Wow, we're really impressed by how well you got the dog to stay." And I was like, well, I wasn't really too happy with how good the stay was because I wanted a lot more. Now, look, I'll tell you guys this. When I'm working dogs, I have pretty high standards for myself when I work a dog because I really want the best for you guys. I really want the best for your dogs, and I just want to see them. I want to see you guys thrive the way that, I'm here in my home with my dogs, and they're just, being so well behaved. But, sometimes I compare dogs to one another, and maybe that's a little unfair, but I always want the best for each and every one of y'all, especially your dogs. So, I noticed yesterday that when I was working this dog, that I was using a slip leash, and I was using something very, very similar to this. And when I first put it on the dog's reaction to the slip leash was that it went tight, and the dog immediately balked to the slip leash pretty heavily. And I probably had the slip leash tight for about 4 or 5 seconds before the dog actually started to go in the direction of the pressure and the leash went slack. I do talk about the principle of pressure a lot. I'm not going to rehash that right now. But if you tighten a leash and then the dog does the thing you want him to do, the leash should fundamentally go slack. So I did that, and the dog balked at it, but it came forward, and I'm like, okay, good, the dog is starting to understand. So I put the dog on the bed, was rewarding the dog quite a bit, got the dog into the down, probably gave the dog the biggest reward it had ever received in its entire life. And then I did what I normally do, is I threw some food over the edge of the bed, and this is where I start to gauge the effectiveness of a slip leash. So I threw the food over the bed, the dog steps off of the bed to get the food, and that's whenever I tighten the leash again. And so the dog balks, but that makes the dog get back onto the bed. Mm-hmm. Well, that proceeded to happen about 15 more times over the next 10 minutes. And I'll tell you, for me, that's a lot. To tell a dog that you can't come off to get the food because I have a leash and I'm standing 4 feet from you, it's really interesting to me. And so the general thing that most people are going to do they're going to over tighten their leash quite a bit, and I don't really want you to do that. So if you have a slip leash on your golden and you're struggling the way that I did, here is the avenue that I would suggest. So 1, make sure whatever place that you're using for the dog is more comfortable than your couch. It still needs to have those clearly defined boundaries so the dog can understand where the edge is. You can't just use a soft, pillowy bed by itself. Take your elevated bed, put something nice, soft, and pillowy on the top of that. Maybe put a drop of lavender oil in there if you got it. And then for the next several days, just triple down on showing the dog that the down on the bed is the only thing that's going to get you the food that you want. Yes, you should feed your dog if your dog is struggling, but you have to kind of find a way to make it very clear to the dog to stay there. The reason I want you to go to this approach, because the general answer that we as humans will end up deploying is that if the dog is, if we feel that we've done a good job of rewarding the dog for staying where we want them to, and then they break the boundary, and then we're using pressure tools, we tend to make the pressure go higher and higher and higher, and we get frustrated. We get frustrated whenever that happens. So what I want you to try to do is to try to defeat the frustration of you getting frustrated, because that's where we make mistakes. I want you to try to really make it extremely, extremely valuable by making it comfortable and making it pleasurable for your dog when they're in that position. So that's, it can be hard sometimes with these Goldens for some reason, and it's just been my experience. Maybe you guys have a little bit different experience with your Golden Retrievers, but I've had a little bit of a tough time with the Golden and a slip leash. There is another option that I'll show you, but I'm real hesitant to use it. This is a slip leash. The one that you saw me with a moment ago was a 3/4 of an inch. Now this is a pretty thin slip leash, and you put that on a dog and you put pressure down it, it quickly amplifies, and it can. I'm not going to say it's uncomfortable, but it's generally, I would say that it's closer to being injurious to the dog when you use something that is this thin on a dog that's just learning pressure. That's why I like the 3/8 inch of a line. So, what do you think? Like, how do you feel about what I said? I'm just kind of curious on your take.
I agree with everything you said. Yeah, I mean, and that's definitely.
I use this sometimes, but man, I'm so sparing. Yeah. I'm so sparing with this tool because, you got I had a conversation yesterday too because somebody that I was speaking with, they didn't want to put a collar on their dog, and we got into an ethical discussion.
A client?
Well, they are a client now, but I had a pretty rough conversation.
Want a slip collar?
They didn't, yeah,
Okay. Okay, sorry,
no, it's okay. No, please, no, it's okay for you to interrupt. I'm not gonna say her name, but you know who you are if you're watching this. And I met with you yesterday, but we had a conversation about it, and one thing that I don't do as a dog trainer is I don't use pain to train dogs. Now I'm gonna say this right now. Pain is actually pretty effective at teaching humans and any other emotional creature, to not do stuff, okay? But I don't think that we should use it ethically. Now, as far as an ethical question goes, the pushback that I got was, well, my veterinarian recommended that, not to do that because it causes pain. And then I have an argument to that, and my argument is, well, does your veterinarian use pain to help the dog? And if you're a veterinarian, you use pain to help dogs because you inject them with needles that gives them helpful vaccines. And it is painful for the dog to feel that. Now, I'm not willing to create pain, but I am willing to make a dog uncomfortable for a choice. Now, when I think about the evolution of us, evolution of an animal, and not every animal is the same. Evolution will show us that there's a set of animals that only senses pain, and that means that you're physically being injured and you are in danger and you need to find a way to get out of that area as quick as possible. And this goes anywhere to single cell organisms all the way up to a human. Every single cell organisms that are animals, and including humans, can feel pain. But there are certain animals that have the adaptation that they can feel uncomfortable. And uncomfortable means that, hey, there's something close by that could present danger to you that could create pain and injury to you. Mm-hmm. So that is actually an advantage that humans have, that we can predict when something is going to be potentially painful, and that might be somewhat uncomfortable. And the cool thing about our brain is that when you sense that there's something that could possibly create discomfort, you tend to avoid those things, and it's a way to keep you alive. It's very complex, and I don't fully understand it. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do like to study this stuff. So as I think about that, I like to use the dog's ability to sense discomfort to prevent them from actually being injured and to prevent them from actually physically being in pain. Now, we all have adaptations, dogs included, that if you feel pain, your body can recover from a lot of pain in a lot of different ways. I know there's people that just live in pain chronically, mm-hmm. and they constantly overcome it. It's pretty amazing to me. And dogs are like that too. So no, ethically, I don't believe that I should be using pain to be able to train dogs, but making them uncomfortable by the use of a slip leash, and where it's measured and the person that is deploying it has years of experience. I think that's very important. So, that's why, with this golden retriever, it's a hard thing for me because, I could do things that I know that will scientifically work to be able to show the dog that, hey, don't do that. But because I have an ethical barrier to doing that, I won't. And so I have to find other ways to try to get the dog to do that. But the good news is with this discussion that I guess I'm having with you guys right now is I've been very, very successful over the several years at being able to teach dogs to learn their boundaries without having to be overwhelmingly putting an overwhelming amount of pressure, with the exception of highly dangerous dogs, because we're really their last hope sometimes, and we have to, like a dog that truly is dangerous needs to truly feel uncomfortable. Okay, I'll go quiet on that one now. Let me drink some water.
That's good. Okay, how do you train a Shih Tzu to go potty in the grass?
Well, you put a leash on them, right? And you have to be willing. You have to be willing to get wet. Like Mandy has a Shih Tzu that. What's your dog? Who is it again? Which
Rosie.
Dog? Rosie. So Rosie is.
She's a puppy.
She doesn't make it all the way to the grass.
She doesn't, yeah, especially if the grass is wet. She wants to go on the sidewalk, on the concrete.
Yeah, and I get that. Like some dogs don't like all the wetness on their underbelly and on their paws. And I just, if you want to do that, the thing is like you got to take them out into the water. Look, here's a real simple way, real simple way. Because you could do what I do with big dogs. I put a leash on you. You're coming into the backyard because you're a big German Shepherd or Beauceron or Jamie if you're watching. But if you have these big dogs, I put a leash on them. You're going to come with me into the grass. So here's a nice way to be able to do it with these little puppies. Okay, water your lawn, pick your puppy up, walk out into the middle of the yard, put the dog down, and let it get back onto the concrete, and then start getting repetitions of that. And so maybe like here's one, you have this little Shih Tzu puppy and you maybe put it down into the grass, and then you have something like, something super yummy for them. And then when they're there, but you still got kind of a grip on them, you start feeding them there. You start feeding them there over the wet grass for a second, and then you let them go and they run back in. But you start showing them that. You start showing them to get on there. And I think that's just a real simple way to go about doing it. But you could lasso them with the leash and walk them out there, and they're putting the brakes on, and but who really wants to do that? And you can, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but put the dog in the grass and let it walk back in. What do you think?
Yeah.
You think
that's
of, is
what we
there?
do. No, I mean, if we go out there and we're out in the middle of the yard and she just stands there for a minute, like, why did you put me down? But then she just goes and we praise her and everything.
I play this little game. I don't do it a lot because I don't always carry a bunch of beds with me, a bunch of place beds with me. But I sometimes get lucky and I'll do this thing called island hopping. And so I'd like to do some real island hopping. But for the island hopping, what I'll do is I'll have two places like in the backyard. And I'll make the dog go from one place, and then I'll call the dog through the grass onto the other place, back and forth, so that way they get a little bit of exposure to the grass, then they get their nice reward, their petting and their praise, and then we just, make them hop all these islands. And then what do we do with the islands? Well, we move the islands slowly further apart, so the dog is having to run back and forth in the yard. So that's another way that you can do it. You could pick up, put your dog down, let it get back on the concrete, or do some island hopping with a couple of place beds.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, how do I get my dog to stop nipping at my child's ankles? My child is afraid.
We did have this question, Mandy brought up. Like, we get some of these questions several times, and we'll see some reoccurring themes. The one thing the reason that I wanted to take this question tonight was because somebody said, my child is afraid. And it's tough to deal with fear when you're being chased by something that you're afraid of, and you're trying to be told by somebody to calm down. It's not easy. It's not an easy thing. So I think the thing that I've been successful with is, putting several weeks of training into a dog. And obviously you guys all know I like to do the play stays inside of the home. But then beyond that, having the child in the room when the dog is actually calm. It's one of the things I've been learning about us humans and about fear, that if you just put us in the same room with the thing that we're afraid of and we willingly come into that room, then we actually end up getting a little bit more courageous about it. So if your child is afraid of the dog and the dog is nipping and biting, begin to have that dog wear a leash around the home, but definitely have the child in the room as you're doing that. One game that I recommend that children play with dogs, especially ones that they're afraid of, is the treat toss game. And this is a very simple game. And in this game, what you would have your child do is you would have your child sit in a chair, and you probably sit next to them, and then y'all take turns at you throw a piece of food, and the dog comes back, and then you offer one. So have your child throw food for the dog. And that can begin to be like, hey, you throw a piece of food, the dog goes and gets it, and then you show the dog you have another one. Then the first time, you maybe don't tell the dog to don't tell your child to give the dog the food, but maybe to drop it, a little bit away from their feet, and progressively let them begin to deal with the dog. It really is a patience game with your child about teaching them to be around the dog. Don't necessarily force them to confront their fears, because we as humans, we just don't do well when we're pressured to face the things that we're afraid of. But you can definitely make a lot of progress by being incremental, by teaching the dog how to become calm. But it is important to teach the child that the more you run from the dog, the more that it's going to chase you. And if you scream, which is likely to happen if you are afraid, that's also going to incite the dog. So that's just an even better case for me to make to y'all, that put the leash on the dog. Put a leash on the dog, so that way you can keep the dog from terrorizing your children.
Good, yeah. Those leashes. Okay.
Yeah, man, leashes are a big deal, man.
Someone asked, how do I get my dog to stop eating plants?
Yeah, I think that, doesn't it kind of go back, maybe that's
I would say that's...
Well, I see that. So, dogs eating plants is really just about catching them in the act. We've got a plant right here that's just right off the set. It's a fern, right? Yeah, I suck with plants. What is it?
What is it? Palm.
Palm, yes. That's what I meant to say. I know that's not a fern. It would have the...
But it's furnished.
It's furnished, right? Yeah, so I have a palm. Yeah, I have a palm right here, right next to the set. And I've seen Gabby going over there a little bit. To kind of mess with it. And so when she messes with it, she's a trained dog, so she understands the meaning of the word no. And so we use that. But maybe you're watching the show because your dog isn't necessarily trained. And so what you should do is supervise that for your dog about what your dog is to interact with. One thing that I've been doing in homes here over the past few weeks, and I think it's really made a difference for some families, and it's just another way of explaining something that I've been doing for years. Obviously today's Sunday, and there's been a lot of football on today. There's probably even a football game on right now. And so with your dog and plants, okay, you probably have your plants inside the home, or maybe they're outside the home. But if they're inside the home, what I'd like you to do is, teach your dog how to be in the game. So that means you're on your floor with the dog and you're playing with a toy, either using, whatever kind of toy. We like these Kongs. I also like these. I also like the leather rag, or the tug toy, or the squeaky toy. And then of course, my dog's favorite toy, which is the ball on the rope. We use these to engage the dogs into a game. But then what you can do is you put the dogs you put the plant that you want off limits to your dog right next to their bed, but far enough to where the dog would actually end up stepping off. And then right there, when they went after the plant, you use your leash to put them back on. When they're not actually focusing back on the plant again, take them off and re-engage them into the game of playing with the ball, playing with you, and learning how to do that. I always like this, okay? I just gave Gabby a ball.
I know, it's just about.
I just gave Gabby a ball, and then Fritz is over there like, oh, now you have the
Yeah.
ball. And now I want it. Who else does that? Like, hey, if you give one of your dogs a ball, do your other dogs actually try to come after it? Well, Fritz is all about that. Fritz is a true believer that what's yours is, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. Right, buddy?
Where's my dad?
Yeah. Well, we'll get you. But like, here, buddy, you can have that one. There you go, buddy. There you go. Now they can both be happy. But he won't be happy until he can collect them all. It's kind of like Pokemon or something.
I've got.
You got
I know all
Pokemon.
about
You have
that.
Pokemon collectors or
Yeah,
hunters in your
just
house.
bone collectors.
Bone collectors.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like the whole there's a couple of ways with this plant. You can catch the dog in the act of going after the plant and teaching them not to do that by having some kind of training collar on there, or you can make it a little bit more elaborate. Play games with your dogs in the rooms where the plants are. Put their place right next to the plant, but with enough space for the dog has to actually come off their place. And then you can tell them, okay, you can't come off to go after the plant, and really work on building the habits of engaging with you and staying where I ask you to.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. How do I teach my Pyrenees to calm down?
It's been interesting because I've trained I've trained 2 Pyrenees over the past 6 months, and these are really, really big dogs, and so I think the first thing that you really need to do is you need to train your Pyrenees to calm down. Is to start training the day that you get them, because this is a really large dog, and they have some pretty powerful instincts, and they have been known, not because it's a bad dog, but they're herding dogs. They have been known to injure children because they start hurting children. I think one of the things that when you're thinking about calming down the Pyrenees is, man, you just can't give these dogs the inside of your house for free without a fair amount of training. And the reason that I say that is that, like, these dogs were meant to be on acreage, moving livestock, and so if you don't necessarily give them rules, they're going to turn you into livestock, and they're going to start mouthing you. They're going to start nipping your heels. They're going to start biting hands because they're going to start doing what their genetics is telling them to do. So the first thing is, don't give these dogs too much freedom in the beginning, and start training these dogs really early. The main thing that I say is always put a foundation onto any dog, but a Great Pyrenees is one that you got to do if you're going to have them inside your home. Get started with your place training, get started with leash walking, and definitely get started with coming when called. But I feel that the place training and the leash walking is the way to go for a Great Pyrenees, especially the place training. But place training, leash walking, coming when called, those big 3 are super, super important. Obviously, if you guys have spent any time with us, we've got a ton of videos covering how to do that on the YouTube channel. If you don't necessarily know how to do that, or you can't find a video that maybe you feel will help you, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to give you some advice about what I would specifically start with the Great Pyrenees. But the place training is always a surefire bet for the vast majority of dogs to get started with.
Okay. Okay, how do I teach my dog to stop destroying stuff in the house?
I've seen some pretty destructive dogs here lately. I've seen a lot of baseboards getting destroyed, door frames getting destroyed. I've seen front doors that have that dogs are jumping up on, and that they're breaking the glass. And so, destructive dogs, it's really a problem, and it's really a management thing. One thing I tell everybody, that if you have a puppy and it's this really excited puppy, I try to keep it really simple for myself. I know I've been saying this all year, and it looks like it's going to turn into next year, but I am going to get a puppy. I've been talking about it. I'm competing here in a couple of months with Gabby, and I do think that after I compete with her, that's when I am going to get involved in that. House. Go to your bed. Go to your bed. Go. Yeah, the dogs are wanting to play right now in the middle of the show, so hey, go to your bed. And she's going to go to Fritz's bed. That's a good girl. Go to your bed. That's what I like about doing the live show. You guys get to see that there are dogs here, and how many commands did I give there? 3, 4? It was 3. Lay down. Yeah, that's definitely 4 or 5. 4 or 5 right there. And now there's a look for me like, hey, you really need to settle down. Yeah. There we go. So I try to keep it real simple, guys. When I'm raising a puppy, I try to do these 3 things: playpen, crate, and a human. And then I start working the foundation skills of play stays, leash walking, coming when called, and learning how to play with me. So playpen, crate, human, and then the foundational skills of play stay, leash walking, coming when called, plus learning how to play with the human. If you keep it that simple, then you're going to see that you're not going to have the problems with destruction. I think that the thing that happens with destruction is that we believe that the dog actually knows how to behave inside the home. We'll get busy or distracted with something else, and they're off by themselves doing the things that dogs do. And, practically every puppy, I'm not going to say all of them, but practically every puppy will start destroying things because they're looking to see where are the boundaries. In the wild, the dog is going to destroy stuff just to see how the world works. Well, your puppy's going to do the same thing inside of your home. So having that plan of, keeping them with the human, keeping them tethered, or keeping them engaged, and almost treating them kind of like a toddler in a way is really going to be your best way about keeping your home intact from getting destroyed. Yes, you can punish dogs for, destroying things, but I don't believe that you should punish a dog that doesn't know or hasn't been taught what it should specifically do when it's with you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have a performance dog and they are always excited. How can I calm them down?
It's an excellent question, and I did answer this question. It was asked on Facebook, but I really like the question because, like a lot of us, we have, a lot of people have Belgian Malinois and German Shepherds, Dobermans, Beaucerons, pit bulls, performance animals. And I know those were almost all herding dogs, but for those of you guys that don't have herding dogs, yes, I know you guys have some pretty fantastic high drive dogs too. The thing with these dogs, especially when they're puppies, is not to calm these dogs, but to actually focus them. Mm-hmm. Because that energy has to go somewhere. They've got all this energy. They were bred to do these really stupendous things. And if you have them inside your home, you really got to direct them in a way that's going to channel them to be something. Like typically, virtually every dog that I know, as they get into adulthood, they all calm down. And yeah, puppies actually sleep quite a bit too. So if you have this really focused dog, I think it's incumbent on us to sometimes just, can you have food in your hand when you walk in the door? Take those steps that are going to prepare you that you're walking through the door, you got a handful of food, you have a ball, you have their favorite ball, you have multiple balls that you can stage throughout the house that you can get quick access to. Because then you can use that food, you can use the toys, you can use the tugs, and you can get the dog directed into that. Now, I saw something the other day that somebody does with performance dogs, is they actually build tethers inside their home. They have a comfy bed, and then they actually have an eye bolt, on the base of the wall. Okay? These are people that are going to have working dogs all their lives. And then they tether the dog to the place and they teach the dog that you're going to stay there, and a working dog can learn how to do that. Beware for chewed lines, though. But really focusing these dogs. And when I talk about focus, just think about being singular in the behavior that you want the dog to do. It's not about the dog just making direct stared eye contact with you the entire time, but it really is that the dog is maybe doing something, but it's concentrated on that particular task, okay? Mm-hmm. But if you really do want a calm dog when you have a performance dog, play tug. It'll wear you out, and it'll also wear them out, and that's a great way to go too. Mm-hmm. All right, looks like we're on the last one.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say? Sorry.
So the flirt pole.
Yeah,
That's
man.
what you need.
You know, that's a plug for our toy, man. The flirt pole is just an awesome
That's the
toy.
best.
Now, the bad news is I'm out of stock right now, but I'm going to work on that. We're out of. There's one particular part that I don't have at the moment, but we're going to get that source to get the flirt poles back in stock. So if you are wanting or needing a flirt pole, but hey, if you have your flirt pole, as long as you have the pole, if you need a replacement piece of leather or anything like that, we do have all those parts. I just don't have the actual pole portion ready.
Sold all those poles already. Wow.
Yeah, we sold all those poles.
Nice.
So yes, thank you very much for all your help with that. Yeah.
Alright.
So
Okay. Last question. How do I get my puppy to stop going after my other dogs?
you know, it just goes back again to that whole thing that I was saying earlier, that if you have your puppy and your puppy actually is going after your other dogs, how are they being managed? And how are you going to let the other dogs actually correct your puppy for their exuberant behavior? Look, I'm going to tell you this, and this is not right or wrong. This is the way that I do it, and there's definitely other ways to do it. I take away from all my adult dogs the ability to growl at dogs inside of our pack. I teach them very early on that if you growl at my puppy, that you're going to get in trouble for that. However, I'm also going to teach my puppies that you are not to mess with my adult dogs. So the question is, well, how do I do that? Well, I really got to get to know the dog. I can prevent it pretty easily. I can put the dog in a crate. I can, I can play just these games where I'm managing dogs and circling them around the house. But the thing is, I just get to know the dog, and I get to know, like, hey, you don't like whenever I do this when you go after my other dog. So the way that a dog would probably bite another dog as a correction, not to eat them, but to say, like, hey, you're exceeding the boundary, I might do something similar, not with my teeth, but with some kind of training collar that would be meaningful for that particular dog. And one of the things that I like to do when my dogs start getting the inkling of that, my favorite thing to do to these dogs is to play with one while the other dog is staying. So for every single one of you guys that has, if you're married, if you have kids, if you've got any other humans inside of your home, here's a great way to get the family involved. If you have multiple dogs, put one dog on their place, okay, and have a human hold the leash slack while that dog is on their place, and then that person's job is to put the dog back on their place every time they get off, while your other family members actually end up playing with the dog, and then switch. And get really good at that switch of having one dog playing with the other family members, and the other dog having to wait, or the other dogs having to wait, and then bring another dog in, and then show them that. And if you do that, you'll create a lot of respect for yourself, and your dogs will delight in you because they'll understand that you're worth playing with, you're worth being respected, and they'll love you for it. So I guess that's all I have to say.
That's good.
All right. Well, and look, we
That's
got through our list. So,
Yeah.
hey, thanks everybody for watching tonight. We've got some, I've got some cool announcements that are going to be coming out this week. So be sure to tune in on Facebook, on Instagram. Obviously, we're on Twitter. Hey, I'm on TikTok. I could, maybe you could watch some of my videos. Send me some suggestions about what I need to do with those, because it feels really awkward when I'm trying to make a TikTok video. But hey, really do appreciate every one of y'all. If y'all made it to the end of the video, thanks a lot. Be sure to leave us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. That way you know the next time that we have another video coming out. Have a great week. We'll be talking to you guys. Take care. Bye.